share thing and the flotation of the share, and the government was taken to court, and then the court had an opportunity to pronounce. They said, look, this is a higher form of trust, and you can't send the president to court on that basis. But that doesn't give an unfettered right to the president to deal with the trust the way he wants. He must, at any time that he's dealing with the trust, put the interest, because fair of the people of Ghana at heart. And you see, that interest is not the subjective view of the president. It's the objective view. So if Richard, if the finance minister, if people believe that this deal will secure the interest and welfare of the people of Ghana, it must be objectively ascertainable, not subjective subjective.
All right.
Not what you think.
And I'm saying, your time is up.
But let me finish with this thing.
No, it's too long. Your time is up.
The last one. Okay, the last one.
Okay, last
he
one.
Says, the finance minister says, because we want to front load, upfront capital, front load the thing. We know we are going to collect royalties, so we want to take money ahead of time. Everybody knows, if we have done petroleum law, petroleum resources, everybody knows that countries that front-loaded, who had petroleum agreements in which they were front-loading provisions, had difficulty.
Why?
Because of the volatility of the market. Today, gold is what?
So there's nothing to be gained in that?
Gold is what? 1,900. So you front-load based on the gold prices today.
Today, yeah.
Tomorrow, gold prices crash to 1,100.
Yeah. So you have
your obligations under the front-loader agreement will now be onerous. Okay? That is why if you have a regular stream of income,
like just direct royalties.
Direct royalties, 200, okay, conservative figure, $150 a month, or $100 billion a month. It allows you to plan because you know that every year you are entitled to $100 million a year. Why would you need to front load?
But aren't we also entitled to finding?
Front loaded is where you want capital. For instance, if we needed money for coronavirus, and we didn't know where to get the money, and we know that we will have royalties for the next 5 years, then we go to the market and say, look, we have to deal with coronavirus. And so we want to front load whatever we are getting now, because coronavirus, if we don't deal with it in the next 6 months, it will devastate the whole economy. Then yes, the agency.
So don't you think you answer your own questions?
Well, I'm answering.
Dealing with coronavirus and why we need investment. So I'm not sure.
No, I'm not dealing with my own question.
You answer your own question.
I'm dealing with you. I anticipated that answer. Because you see, coronavirus, what did they do? They got 100 million.
Don't worry.
They got 275 million from the stabilization fund. And that's a sovereign fund.
So
they got 10 billion from the Bank of Ghana.
Okay.
They got $1 billion from the IMF.
So means coronavirus is gone?
Oh, so you need 500 million.
No, I'm just saying. Your point is made. Your position.
Let me go over to Franklin. Let me read some messages, and then we'll hear Franklin on the second phase of this, and then we'll wrap up with the start here. And then we can talk about education a bit. That is very, very crucial. Kwesi Reynolds and Agona Odobin sends in this one. It says, so far, the NDC and some CEOs have not helped Ghanaians in telling us what it is that makes the Japa deal so bad. Oh, Kwesi, really? I think they've been quite clear in outlining what their concerns are. I honestly think if we approach the discussion of the deal dispassionately, devoid of politicization, we shall have a better understanding of this issue, and Ghana will eventually benefit. Bright from Dansoman says, I don't trust the Japa royalties deal nowadays because this government is trying to make it a profit in favor of the party, and it must be stopped immediately. This one, A.U. Farouk says, in Tamale North, says he's quite close to you. In Tamale, you're in Central, he's in North. Says, in fact, good morning, the Japa royalties is illegal. MEP cannot take Ghanaians for granted like this. There must be a probe into it. Let's see. We heard the Oman Trust. Okay, we heard about the Oman Trust Fund, which has been forgotten by Ghanaians. Let's be careful about this Ejapa business. Michigan in Alavanyo. Let us... Uncle Mike from Sakumon, I told you, please, let us keep the messages clean. Please ask Mr. Ahiagba if the MPP will be around to see the legal issues that will arise one day, as Ghana has given out control, even if Ghana still has 51%. Well, Amos in Accra says, good morning. Thanks to Bernard for asking the finance minister all the quick questions for all to understand the Ejapa deal. Now, the minority is shifting the goalpost that the issue with the deal is a constitutional breach, but not that the deal is not good. I believe this is a very innovative way of raising funds using our mineral resources that have eluded the country for decades. We can't be mining for years and still be poor, says Amos. And Awudia Bernard says, I've been listening to you via my young phone, and I must say without equivocation that I like the way you are handling the show. Again, are we safe as far as this deal is concerned? It's the question he is asking. And Eko Oche in Doriomu says, I think there shouldn't be any assumption that the NPP government has done everything right with the Japa SPV. Now, the work left to be done is just education or only information dissemination. There are several things still wrong with the deal. It must be corrected. Both MPP and NDC are doing things to benefit themselves, only or with very little benefit for the country. I think that's a very, very good text that you have sent in, so they should keep working at it. Good morning to you, Godfred, and your panelists. My name is Dominic from Airport Residential. It's obvious that this deal is not going to benefit all Ghanaians, but if the president insists, well, December 7th is just around the corner, he says. So keep the messages coming through, and we'll continue the conversation. Franklin. Hello, Franklin.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, so I'm sure you've heard.
I've been listening to a monologue, but that's fine.
No, it was just his turn. As it is now, your turn as well to speak on the matter. So I asked him the question, and I'm sure you have explored it, on why we could not have incorporated this in Ghana. Honorable Yunus Afuseni seems to make a sound case for perhaps considering an incorporation in Ghana and how it would not really affect the deal in any way.
Well, sometimes when it's like the beautiful bride who is to be married off, presumably you go to the home. Is that not the case? I suspect that is what Honorable Inusa is saying, that look, you have the gold and you are renowned for doing so. So maybe you could have listed here as well. But I suspect there's some value in trying to list outside as well. I mean, these are big international transactions and you probably want to do all of those. If I understood Honorable Inusa well, I think he's also trying to suggest that, well, these assets belong to you, and people will still come here and buy gold anyway. So why don't you have 100% ownership, and then you dictate the pace, rather than going to, as it were, mortgage a bit of it, and that's where the confusion is coming, because the values have been obviously depressed because of that, and so you're not going to get the best value. I think these are very good conversations to have. And that is why this whole deal should have been dispassionately discussed. You see, this is not one of those deals these are not private sector corporate deals that you want to undertake. If you are doing so within your bank or as an investment dealer or broker, well, you're within your rights for some multinational companies. But when it becomes a sovereign wealth issue, then the dynamics actually change. And that is where this whole conversation is coming back. I'm sure even the finance ministry has seen that, well, in spite of their competence, this is not a private placement. This is a national asset. And so they are now beginning to unwind and want to have a conversation. But I worry that the finance minister seems to be a bit adamant that come hell or high water, how do you even say what that's expression?
Yeah, that's fine.
Right. They'll still go ahead and get it done anyway. Then somebody will ask, what's the point in having the conversation, therefore, when you have decided you take that narrow road? So there are questions about exigencies. And I suspect that this whole thing should have been done in a manner that that mimicked what we did when we had oil. I think it's the basic requirement in accountability. You see, there's nothing wrong with suggesting that what belongs to you, you tend to take care of, but what belongs to others tend to fall into disrepair. Sometimes we want to say that we want to trust our elected officials to manage affairs for us, but the history has shown that it has not been the case, which is why it is important to have broad stakeholder conversations so that the tragedy of the commons principle does not befall our resources. It's a natural thing to expect. And it beats my mind that in spite of the center-right thinking of our friends, which is why people assume that we are neck-deep joined Siamese twins as Imani with the MPP, but unfortunately, they do not do things that mimic the center-right type of thinking. I mean, I would have thought the center-right thinkers, however business-minded they are, and Imani is pro-business, by the way. When it comes to strict national assets, these are different conversations to have. The capitalist maximization is a good thing, but as soon as it becomes a natural resource it becomes a national asset, the permutations could apply. The same principle would apply in corporate banking or corporate investment world. But the fiduciary relationship between these entities who are dealing on our behalf, and then the rest of us, is essentially different. That is why people go to jail whenever they are found foul after certain things are on earth. Even in the corporate world, these things happen. How much more in the world of the sovereign? So nobody is ascribing any ill motive. We're always saying that yes, you may have the competent head, but be careful, because this is not your private farmhouse. This is a national asset, and as much as possible, carry everybody along. And I think it's not too much to ask, actually.
But there are those who also say that perhaps for this to work, we need a private entity kind of thinking rather than the sovereign type of thinking to be able to make this work, which is why this kind of proposal is even being considered, why we're having this kind of conversation where we say let's try and play the market with perhaps the biggest revenue resource we have.
Well, the point really is that sovereign wealths are not necessarily devoid of private capital, and nobody is saying that. In any case, if you have a prize asset, and then you want to offload the shares, people will come and buy anyway from all over the world. And this is not new. We've been doing this for most of our, whether debt or equity. We've been doing some of this stuff for a very long time. All we are saying is that the vehicle you are using, the approach you are using, must be subjected to some strict governance issues. Take for instance the shareholding structure. The control processes are a bit skewed against us. I've heard some people suggest that once you list under New Jersey and you are subject to the laws of the UK, then because the laws of the UK also ensure ABC rules, anti-bribery and corruption or Foreign Corrupt Practices Act rule, then you are covered. And you are covered for the 49% as well as the 51%, right? But the point is that the dynamics change drastically once you list under a tax haven and so described as New Jersey. I don't think that the issues around beneficial ownership, which I mentioned a while back ago, could be known. Let me give you a critical example. So what happens if the 49% shareholding changes hands? And it keeps changing hands? We will not have any opportunity to know, even though there will be disclosures on the London Stock Exchange that, okay, this has changed hands. But by listing in Jersey, there's no way we'll know the beneficial owners. So it may well be and yeah, I'm just conjecturing by the way, but precisely the reason why we are saying that don't list in a tax haven like New Jersey, because it may well be that, well, people acting on behalf of certain persons close to this deal may then turn back and buy the assets, and we have no way of knowing the beneficial owners. And I don't think that is right for a country like this. So there are moving parts of this conversation that ought to be had. Nobody is quarreling with the idea of listing assets like this in the stock exchange. They are saying, one, if you do so, give evaluation. And I've heard the finance minister suggest, finally, that he's going to let his guys give maybe a 30-year or 20-year some sort of calculation to determine the net present values and all of that, the net asset value and all of that. Well, they may be guesstimates, and which is what people have been asking for. And they started with 3 years. Nothing stops them from doing more than that. Precisely also because, well, the stock cannot be predicted. But at least everybody now agrees that gold is the most stable source of store of wealth. In crisis times, gold has always shown that it's the best value to have as a store of wealth. Be it the crisis in the States, globally, and even the pandemic, that gold is going to do well. Gold is almost hitting almost 2,000, and it's likely to go to $2,400. If you use an estimate of 1,006, which I've heard my good friend Charles, the deputy minister, suggest that's what they are trying to use, what it means is that yes, you are now getting into the market, and so you probably want to go in a bit low. Precisely the reason we are asking, why are you doing that at that price when the value really is going to be about 2,000? Well, some investment bankers will say, well, this is an asking price. It may jump and it may go higher. Granted, but we needed to understand all the dynamics that is involved in this pricing mechanism. And then the second point was on the royalty. Why have you set and cast in stone a figure of 1 billion when indeed that's the value you place on yourself? It's like you're going to sell yourself in a contract, and then you say, well, this is how much I'm worth. All we are saying to you is that given the dynamics at play right now, you are most likely to be worth more than what you have actually put out in the contract. It's not difficult to have a conversation about this. So there's a lot of hot air generated about this simple request. I don't think anybody, and I need to emphasize again, nobody went out to do mischief. Nobody went out to say government cannot do what it's trying to do. All we are saying is that give us further and better particulars, because this is not your private asset. This is a national asset. And while we trust that you may get us the best value, or from what we've seen, you've not given us sufficient proof and data to be able to come to that realization. So it's important that these conversations are had. We are grateful to everybody who has been part of this conversation. But I think this is also one more understanding that you can only develop this country through a tripartite arrangement. And I don't think any of the tripartite parties are any less in the conversation. Certainly not the government, certainly not CSO, certainly not the media, certainly the parliament. But I worry, let me add this last point about the media, the parliament. I worry greatly that there's a belief that anything that goes through parliament, however the construct of the parliament, and however limited time is allotted to discussing it, passes muster. And so it satisfies the governance or good governance criteria. We've seen in this town, both under NDC and NPP, the frightening speed of light at which multi-million, if not billion-dollar projects have been rushed to parliament. But you see, it checks the accountability box just by that, saying, oh, it went to parliament. However majoritarian, tyrannical that was exacted. And I worry that if we don't open up the conversation a lot more, even civil society with some muted expertise could die. Because our parliaments definitely are the reasons why you see very much activism from the sides of CSOs. I shudder to think that the day we say that a law that is passed, for instance, because it's legal and it's constitutionally mandated, a law is passed to ban the sun from appearing from the skies, then it's a good law. that day we would describe that as legal plunder. In fact, we would have lost all souls, all modicum of rationality to say that because the law was passed to ban the sun from appearing in the sky, then it is a good law. That is where we are headed at.
All right, and thank you very much, Franklin Kujo. Final words on this one. Let me come to Richard. Richard, you can also wrap up on this matter. You've heard Honorable Inusa, and he raises the issue of the ethics of it, and that should matter to an institution like the Dankwa Institute, looking at your past history. And he does raise serious concerns about the ethical boundaries here. You don't see them?
Well, Godfred, I think where Franklin ended, generally speaking, the concerns they have in engaging the substance of the deal, the engagement with ministry, finance ministry, is going to let them have the information that they are needing. So I think that the balance...
We invite you. You see, one of the things Richard forgets is the critical CSO. Yeah. I've announced publicly here that we would include the Dankwa Institute in all our interactions, so that Richard will be guided, and then you will not attack us.
Opinions for sale.
But I'm happy he came back with that, because you see, the thing about it is that even if we are engaged, we have to be objective. We have to look at the principal objective, why we are engaged in this and what is at stake. Now, if we focus too much on the form as to deviate so much from the substance, we'll get ourselves mired in a conversation about the form and then ignore the substance, which is what I want to focus on. And so if we have a disagreement, it's based on what matters at the end of the day. We can disagree and debate all the ethical issues and the other ones, but then in the end, it's a bread and butter issue for this country. Are we going to address that? At what point do we engage that subject? And that, for me, is the difference in engagement. You see, the constitutional matter, I agree with my brother, and I think he agrees, even though he wants to continue, there is an afterthought. So that is a given. He talks about the incorporation of the company.
Yeah.
Is he?
In Ghana.
In Ghana. Okay, so there's a measure of a Japa in Ghana which holds the company and then does transaction with a Japa that is registered outside. Now, the registration in Jersey, they say, is a tax haven. And tax haven, and I like my brother when he actually took away the tax incentive as the basis and said, well, that is not why government is listed by purposes of secrecy, which is not the case. Okay, so it is actually a listing in the in all tax havens, right? So what is the fuss about Jersey? Because in the United States, they come second on the what do you call financial secrecy index. Okay, Jersey comes 16th on that. So if you're listed in Jersey, if that's your concern, financial secrecy is your concern, vis-a-vis United States, United Kingdom, you are actually listed in a place that is seen as more transparent than the United States of America.
But doesn't that give cause for him to then say, for instance, why not do everything then in Ghana, where we know what our laws are? If he wants information, he knows where to go. Yeah. If you need tax, come to Parliament, they will waive it for you. Yeah. And everything is at play. Yeah, there's nothing to hide.
Yeah, you can do that, and
wouldn't that be better?
You can do that, but whether or not that is better is subjective.
Okay.
But the point I'm saying is that
why is Jersey a bigger place than Ghana for this? Why?
No, it's a vehicle. Okay, the Japan will be listed here in Ghana as well, wouldn't it? It will be.
Because we'll be listed on the stock exchange.
Exactly. So we'll be listed here in Ghana. Now, what the benefit you derive, in my estimation. If you are registered there, therefore facilitate your listing in London, a London Stock Exchange, you have market confidence, okay? Which is something that in the stock market is capital.
Certainly.
Okay? So you have to look at where you are going and what your long-term projection is for this fund, which is the reason you make certain decisions. So that all we need is to come to this table and say, okay, well, we understand what you are trying to do? How can we ensure and safeguard against anything that will hurt the interests of this country? That, for me, is a substantive discussion we should have. So everything else that is going on, if, Godfred, if you want to focus on Honorable Enis Afusedi's argument, okay, if you want to focus on some of the argument made by the CSOs, the conclusion you come to is that this thing, let's stop it. But then when you come to that conclusion, and I ask the question, was this potentially going to help Ghana? And if you ask me, I said yes. But then we engage in this analysis, get to a point where we are paralyzed, and therefore we abort the deal. But this is a deal that would have helped Ghana. And that's where I am saying we should focus and have the conversation. This Japa deal, out of many other things it will do, will invest in mining companies, okay, and in return get royalties, which then becomes asset for this country, and it will build forward, okay, accumulate and build the wealth of the fund. So it is something really that we have not engaged. I'm going to have a list of things here I can discuss with you, which all of us can look at and say, look, this is a good thing. Let's see, for example, let's say, okay, I just discussed one with you. Yeah. So provide finance to mineral companies in exchange for royalties. So it's not only Ghana's royalties, but can look around Africa and go make investment that will bring returns for us. So we are building value. So our 51% share will accumulate. And the minister was careful to say that the 500 million we're talking about is not equal to the 49% shares that we're going to float. It could be 1% of that is 500 million. You see, so it's a question of us engaging this devoid of partisan affinity and look at it substantively as Ghanaians to say, where is this likely to take us? By looking at examples around the world, to look at, for example, I cited this example the last time, the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, look at how much is accumulated over time, okay, and see, how can we put safeguards in place to ensure we arrive there? The skepticism around the conversation, I think Franklin said that really minutes ago, to say that the fact that it's listed in Cayman Islands and the people who are working this deal could turn around and go and buy it, that skeptical thinking gets to a point where it actually crowds away.
Richard, hold on.
Oh, I thought you had left.
He's not going anywhere.
Listen, some of these arguments cannot just be dismissed. You see, if you've read the history,
I haven't.
No, he's not dismissing
I'm not dismissing it. I'm just saying that brings to
that it's not just conjecture. The point is that there's tons of evidence written, academically, rigorously written, verifiable facts that these tax havens have become places of skating.
Okay, you are here. So in substance,
let me just make.
Oh no! You can't just take my time.
Franklin, write it. I'll give you time. I'll give you time.
The point I am making is that, Godfred, if we begin to engage these things, it gets to a point. You say, don't do it. That's a tangent we're supposed to likely end up in.
No, they said it differently.
Yes, well, that's my calculation, because if you are saying that by virtue of it being listed wherever it's listed, you fear that somebody will turn around and go and buy, so therefore I am worried. Don't do it, which means that in its present form, it has to be aborted. And I'm saying, if at some measure you say that this thing is good, all you need is more information, aborting that, it's not giving you the information. So we need to get to a point where we are looking at what matters. All other issues we can address. He talked about the Petroleum Wealth Fund, which we have gone around this country to discuss and engage people. But in the end, you get to a point where nobody is satisfied. There are still questions raging on many years after it's been implemented. So the question is that you cannot get to a point where you have all your issues exhausted. But what you do is you become laser focused on what matters. And that is with life. What you do is that you calculate and you balance your risk and ensure that going forward, your outcome will be much higher than the inherent risk that you face. And that's the balancing act that is part of managing and advancing the well-being of a country. So I agree. If you have any such concern, raise them. But whilst you have raised those, let's now focus and say, what is the matter at hand? And that, for me, I think Franklin will agree, is the balance of policy making. What is the problem we face? and what complement of policy ideas can help us address them. And that's the engagement we should make. So if you are opposed to this, what is your alternative? Okay? And that's why I said the NDC was not honest when they had an alternative before, which was much the same. So if today you are opposed to this one, what alternative do you have? Discuss that. Let's not engage in these peripheral discussions as to negate the substantive discussion. So that for me is an issue to address. The thing my senior talked about, the guaranteeing the term of the director. I mean, you are forming a new company, okay? I don't think that is cast in stone anyhow. But for the purposes of company stability, okay? For the purposes of company stability, are you saying that it should be even advised that, okay, well, let's leave that open to chance? When you are now just nurturing a company. And now even the skepticism that gets to the point that, oh, somebody put somebody there to guarantee something for them, for me, actually betrays the NDC's own thinking, because we were here in this country, few days before they left power, they installed officers whose tenure will surpass the government that is coming. Of course, the number of days that they were supposed to stay in transition before a new government.
Yes,
I haven't mentioned anybody. I haven't mentioned but I'm saying, but you did that. But you did. I didn't mention anybody, but you did that. Okay? So if that was a sound advice, why didn't they take it? So the point I'm making is that let's get to a point where we are focused on what really will advance Ghana's interest. And I have every confidence, if I go through this, one interesting one. One interesting one, and I like to say very good morning to my senior Henry Kukofu, lawyer Henry Kukofu.
Chairman.
Yes. So he's now the executive, I think, executive director of the EPA. EPA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you see, this will interest him. You understand? So ensure that mining operations it has an interest in are conducted in such a manner to prevent adverse effect on the environment, resources, and people of the region in which they operate. Fantastic contribution.
Well, is that an EPA this thing, objective or?
Oh no, he's talking about
that's a Japan objective.
How can he do that?
Absolutely. So it means
because the Japan
he is investing.
when it invests its money as part of its.
You see, and this is
That's why we should reject Japan.
Calm down, let him finish.
Here's a
Because that rule, that duty has just mentioned, conflicts with the duty of the EPA.
No, it does not.
It does not. It's intentional. I thank you for understanding. The point is that when you go out there and buy and invest in companies in which you
set your own terms to the company,
you hold royalty interest, you guide the company to be responsible. To say, as far as our terms of doing so, we think that we are environmentally responsible. We are investing in you, so therefore conform to who we are. And that is what is that? Honorable, why you sit in Parliament and you negotiate contracts and things on behalf of this country? All the terms and conditions that come, they are not our bidding. It's a bidding. We're doing the biddings of the people who are giving us the money.
No.
Please.
No.
Oh,
we cannot.
No. He just invited me.
Okay, quickly.
Okay. So what are you talking? What do you understand what I was saying? Though,
contract that comes to Parliament is subject with development partners.
Yeah.
Is first of all subject to negotiation by the technical directors.
No, you didn't get my point. You didn't get my point. All I'm
finish.
saying is that the terms and conditions that they visit upon the contract.
They don't visit any terms and conditions on us. That's what I want you to understand.
They are negotiated.
Negotiated conditions.
Okay. All right. But inherently, there are terms and conditions, whether or not you like it, because I don't understand why you have a deal and the company that gives you a loan, the country that gives you a loan or whoever gives you a loan says a percentage of the assets and maybe the contract will be executed by people from our country.
Because the money is from their country.
Exactly. That is a term. Yes,
no. Please. Even if you are taking a loan from America.
Yes.
It's taxpayers.
It's taxpayers' money.
Yes.
And so the part of the contract can only be approved in the American Congress.
Yes.
If the American people see how that loan will benefit them.
Exactly. And so that's what I'm saying.
So it are terms.
That's exactly.
No.
Honorable.
That's a classical liberal. You should know that.
No. That's exactly what I. Hold on.
Mr. I have 3 minutes.
Yes. You see, that's exactly what I'm saying. He just made my point for me.
I'll give you just a 30 seconds of the time.
No, please, hold on.
I'll give you the time, don't worry. Franklin, I'll give you time.
Are you listening?
Yeah.
The very thing I'm saying is exactly what he's saying. To say that because you are taking the loan, it becomes your liability, you're paying it back. But then the country giving it to you says that they want their citizens to see how it benefits them, and so therefore, condition to that contract loan, we have to have 1%, or maybe some of the consultation will have to be done by our citizens. Yes. That is a condition you are getting. So a Japan can do the same thing and say, well, we are putting this money in to invest in your mining.
These are our terms.
Exactly. And our terms are such that we want to make sure that you're environmentally responsible. That simply is the point I'm making.
Thank you very much.
How is 3 minutes dissipated in that manner?
These are my terms and conditions as an investor.
Okay. So like I'm saying, let me just
I'll give you time, don't worry.
Frankly, it's not being fair. When he's talking, I'm quiet.
I'm going on a break. Let me take a quick break.
So when you come back, I'll finish. Then you can go.
We can just 1 minute on this one. The biggest will be right back. Charlie, Georgie, give me one.
So today you give us coffee.
The world is impossible without time. Time is endless motion. Make time work for you. Bet Planet. Time to bet.
Welcome back. Richard, you can wrap up quickly.
Yeah.
Super quickly.
Oh, no, wrap up. I mean, I'm not like my senior.
He has 1 minute.
Yes, in Parliament they carry on for a long time. So, you see, the point is, this deal is good. We need to engage the questions that people are vexed with.
Let's ask him this 1 minute. You can't ask him a question.
Just a question so that you can.
Well, first of all, ask for time for me, then you can ask a question.
You can add in time.
Okay.
No,
Richard says that this deal is potentially going to help Ghana.
Yes.
Yes, that's his opinion. But my question is, how do I know that?
Richard, go on.
Well, how did you know that this Fourth Republic was going to endure when we set out to bring it into being?
You must have faith.
Nobody. Exactly. So you must have faith in this. So that's how we get there. So the point is that he must have faith, and we will engage everyone. Now the CSOs are at the table. The NDC must come to the table in good faith, and we'll shepherd this thing to the destination it should benefit our country.
Thank you very much. Franklin, you wanted to make a point.
Yes, I think we need to make an emphatic statement that the divergent opinions around the valuation is still critical of the royalties. Don't forget, the $1 billion, the royalty that is cast in stone, only applies to the 51% shares of Ghana. It does not apply to the 49% that will be listed on the stock. Let's get this fundamental difference clear, which is why we keep saying that is why we needed to know. You cannot cure that by just market capitalization of the 49% that will be listed thereabout. So please, there are reasons why we ask these questions about the capitalization of the assets and the value of the royalties. I think it's important that we do that. The other point I need to make is that I'm not too sure the advice of the Attorney General eventually, all of them eventually reflected in the final agreement, because there are still issues around the duration of these leases, because the question has been asked, for instance, if you own a mining lease, if you have a mining lease, that is averagely 21 years, because that's what is usually, that is the estimated value, the tenure right now. What happens to when the lease runs out and then you have bigger fines? What happens to that value? You see, and the contract does not seem to give you that clarity on this. In some respects, it's just like the ACA conversation. What happens if you dug a lot more and you found far more significant, fines than had been agreed? So these are conversations that we must have some clarity on. And I think it's been very useful. It's still going to be very useful. But we now understand why this is being done in a rush. We need money.
His question has been addressed that there's going to be engagement in the matter. So that's why I said I will engage. So he's going to get that information.
He has finished. I'm moving on to my next conversation, actually. So it's okay. No more Ejapa. Ejapa is off the table. We will negotiate it later. It's off the table. Let's talk a bit of education in the final parts of the program. But let me just take a couple of messages. We have a lot of messages today, so I'm trying to be fair to our listeners and our viewers. Hello, Godfred. I don't understand why MPP will decide to push a Ejapa deal now. The government is pushing the neutrals to DC for this December poll. This is coming from Kofi. Also coming through, Daniel Aboy from Bolga says, why are we privatizing our state resources? Can't we manage it ourselves? God bless Ghana. And he says another one, says, Charlie, we need a very clear breakdown about Ejapa. It's confusing. Well, I think my guys have done a good job of trying to break this down, you know. But we also have some infographics, and just go to citynewsroom.com as well. It's been made simple for you. Abdul Razak from Boku says, it seems as a country we are nowhere near ending all the brouhaha and hula baloo about the almighty Ejapa royalties. As this, we must listen to neutral people and not politicians. Well, politicians are involved in this because Parliament is involved, so we can't really remove them from the conversation. Good morning. Newton from Tema Community 2 says, I want to be educated on how come CSOs like Imani and CDD seem to be all-knowing in every issue that arises in Ghana. Is it that they have all professionals from all the sectors as members? Because we have CSOs like COPEC and Africa Education Watch, which are strictly into energy and educational issues respectively, as in when it matters. But especially with Imani, almost every issue in Ghana, they have something to say. I'm beginning to lose interest in them. Well, Newton, let me help you a bit. A lot of CSOs have what they call fellows. Now, you might just see the name, but under it, they have fellows who specialize in different things. So, Danko Institute, for instance, Mr. Hiagba here might specialize in law. There might be somebody who specializes in the capital markets. There might be somebody there who specializes in sports law. So, whenever an issue comes out, you will hear Danko Institute. It is not Mr. Hiagba speaking as an expert on every matter, but it is simply because they have people with different kinds of expertise who will redo the research, put out a position that will be expressed by Mr. Hiagba or will be expressed by Franklin. So when you hear Franklin speak on the matter, it's not that Franklin has an expertise in every matter or CDD is an expert in every matter. It's simply because the way the CSO structure works, under every organization, they have different fellows. Franklin and Mr. Hiagba, I hope I'm being fair to that explanation.
It's like asking a pastor why he can quote from Exodus to Revelation. The Bible was written by God. You don't know where we go.
It's okay, Franklin. Okay.
So we are professional Jeremiahs.
Okay, so this one says, the salvation by Honorable Inusa is so simple and makes it easy for all of us to understand. And someone says, I should ask whether you use Danko Institute money to buy property without scrutinizing the legal documents of the said property. Well, I don't think he will do so.
That's not what is happening.
So let's talk education a bit. So the president has made some pronouncements regarding education, and it's something that is dear to the hearts and minds of a lot of Ghanaians, especially those in the private schools. We have the public schools and the private schools. The school term has been deferred till January by the president, but some categories of students will be in school for 10 weeks to prepare for examinations, and then everybody comes back in January. We do know that there's an education committee at the ministry that is sitting to try and find the right path back to schools. But the problem lies primarily with the private school sector, there are quite a lot. Public school teachers are getting paid, irrespective. Private schools are saying we are not getting paid. Our teachers are having all kinds of problems. They've tried to access the MBSSI funding as well. The results have been mixed for some of them. And basically, a lot of the schools are struggling to stay afloat. So they are asking questions, what about the private schools? What is the best path to get private schools back into the equation? And hopefully I'll be able to get Kofi Asare, Executive Director of Africa Education Watch, as part of this conversation going forward. Kofi Asare.
Hi, Godfred.
Yes, Kofi, thank you for joining us. We've come back to this conversation, and this week it has been particularly urgent listening to the private schools who are pushing for some sort of solution, because there also seems to be pushback from parents. I was sent a letter today by a parent who has been asked to pay 1,800 Ghana cedis for the virtual learning experience, which is basically, according to the parents, is the same amount he pays for regular school fees from his schools, from his ward's private school. So a lot seems to be happening in the private school side of things. How do we find a proper solution, a working solution that will solve the labor problem side and solve the teaching problem side?
Okay, good morning to your cherished audience and then the panelists. Let me begin by indicating that private schools form a critical mass of the education service delivery subsector. Indeed, close to 40% of schools in the basic education sector are private. And so without private schools, you could imagine the chunk of students who will not have access to an education. It is important for us in discussing private schools to always situate the fact that about 70% of these schools are low fee paying. And so people normally would just, conceptualize a Morning Star or a Rich Church to be a private school always. No, majority of the schools, only 5% are elites. About 7% are low-cost private schools that are dotted across the country in all the regions, and most of them are located in communities where government has not been able to provide public schools there. And so their presence there is actually complementary. In many instances, they are not a matter of choice, but then it's a matter of necessity for students living in these catchment areas to go. For example, if you look at Abobulushi, Kaswa, Amasama in Accra here, Ashiaman, in the South municipality, in all these areas, because of land issues, government couldn't plan properly when they were developing. And so private schools have to emerge and then support government's efforts to ensure that no child misses an education, and Ghana remains on track to achieve the SDG 4 and then the education strategy plan target of ensuring that every child of school going in at the basic level is able to access a basic education. And so looking at it from this perspective, private schools are partners. Now the challenge we have is that since closure, they have indicated that there's no money to pay their teachers. And that is not a Ghana case. It's the same across the continent. It's happening everywhere. And so when the president announced that the 600 million austerity package for industry being managed by MBSSI had been launched, everybody was happy because private schools are companies. They are owned by limited liability companies. And about 4,000 private schools have so far applied to the fund. They've gone through a laborious process of engagement with MBSSI, KPMG being the auditor, and then more or less the due diligence contractor. And then through this process, so far, about 625 schools have been cleared, validated by KPMG on behalf of MBSSI to receive loans. We are talking of loans averaging 50,000 cedis a school, because out of 4,000 plus private schools, the amount they were looking at was about 31 million Ghana cedis. Now, we've gotten to the point where MBSSI have gone ahead to send messages to these schools that their loan applications have been approved. And so within this week, which just ended, they were going to be contacted by their local banks about receiving the money. So we've gone to approval stage. for 625 of these schools. The emerging issue presently is this. Even though MBSSI have been dealing with the conference, the Council of Private Schools, that the council comprises the owners, teachers, and everyone. Even though they've been dealing with this association through the application process, they had an MOU with them to coordinate the application, because there are a lot of private schools, about 36,000 private schools. So coordination was done by the council. It only emerged 2 days ago that MBSI is saying that they are not going to pay the loans to these 625 schools, i.e. companies that have applied for which they have already approved. But what they are going to do is that they're going to pay the money to their employees directly, that is the teachers. And this has been, the source of a tangle between the Private Schools Council, the National Council of Private Schools, and MBSSI. The council is saying that, look, we are a council. Our members are limited liability companies, that's the schools, and they have the staff. And so if our members, as the schools, have applied for a loan, a 3% interest loan, for which our members are paying, not their teachers, but the companies are paying, why are you now beginning to determine or to change the terms and say that you are going to pay the money directly to the teachers of our members? And so if that's the case, then our responsibility in the MOU we have with you, as NBSI, which more or less includes that the fact that the council will facilitate the repayment of the loan by their members. If that's the case, then you need to absolve us of that responsibility, because if you want to do directly the teachers, then go ahead and repay the teachers. So that's the tangle going on now, that they don't want the money to pay to the teachers, the money should be paid to the member organization, that is the schools, because it is the school that is obtaining the loan, the school that will be held responsible for non-payment. We at Africa Education Watch, having engaged extensively with the actors within this private school loan business, have come to the conclusion that in as much as teachers have been home for all this while, since April, no salary, majority of them, we are talking about 94,000 teachers here, they have dependents. And if we don't take time, by January, most of these low-cost private schools wouldn't be existing, because everybody would have left that job. And we are talking about a teacher salary averaging about $100 a month. So you see, if you don't manage this carefully, it will backfire and lead to children not having access to an education by January when schools reopen. And so we are going to propose that there is a contract of employment between teachers and the private schools. Let's respect that employer-employee contract. Okay, and let's not sidestep that relationship. It's very, very important. It is also important that KPMG has validated all the documents, including the teacher data they submitted, all 94,000. So if we have a regulator in the person of the National Inspectorate Board responsible for regulating private schools, then it should be possible for NBSSI to go ahead and make payments to these schools, to these 625 schools, that's the first cohort of the 4,000 schools. Pay the monies to them, and then engage the National Inspectorate Board to monitor the disbursement of the funds by the schools, because they are the regulator. And we all have the list of the teachers. So NIB will ensure that school A, that has 10 teachers, have disbursed their outstanding salaries to them. It's as simple as that. So that we're able to move ahead and stop this petition to the president, petition to this, demonstration coming. I think the back and forth is too much. And at the end of the day, I'm saying that the child, the student or the people is the one whose educational rights is at stake. Because if we don't manage this thing carefully, by the time we get to January, private schools, majority of them, will not have teachers to even teach in them. Especially for those ones in the rural areas. There are about almost 300 schools in this list from the Upper East, Upper West, and the North regions. And so if we don't manage this carefully, we might see a lot of private schools, the low-cost ones, closing down by the time schools reopen in January.
All right, hold on for a bit, Kofi. Let me come to Honorable Inusa and what he has made of this situation, especially for the private schools. And we know that a lot of people assume private schools are the posh ones, but private schools, there are a lot of private schools that are just like public schools. And especially this week we spoke to a head teacher from a village in the Volta region who said, look, he pays his teachers 200 Ghana cedi salary a month, and even that has become a bit of a problem. and they are the only school around. So if they shut down, where do the kids get an education?
Well, it's really troubling. It's a worrying time for private schools. Private schools have suffered a double agony under this current administration, the Nana Akufo-Addo administration. They were excluded from the free senior high school program, when in fact the cost of educating a senior high school student can be determined, and opportunities are made available to the private schools to recruit or admit students from the senior high schools, and the payment that government would have been making on their behalf in the public school will then be transferred to the private schools. That's why John Dramani Mahama is promising to make private schools part of the program for the implementation of the free senior high school program. It's very important. I mean, it is not rocket science. Everywhere that you don't limit the implementation of that policy to only the public schools. I mean, you should target not the school, but the students. Every student who is a Ghanaian is entitled by the policy to free senior high school education. And so the future NDC government will extend that to the private sector, the schools in the private sector. Now, coronavirus, like the Minister of Finance said when we were hit by the pandemic, has challenged the economic fundamentals of this country. We have lost a lot of revenue. We are unable to go to work, so productivity has plummeted. Trading activities have slowed down because people simply had to stay at home. So we have lost a lot. Now, coronavirus itself, and the minister again said, exposed the vulnerabilities of our economy. And so we are looking for money. We've eaten all our resources to the bone. There's no money anywhere. And so government has tried to see how it can reduce the impact of the coronavirus by using $600 million cedis out of the $275 million we allowed it to take from the stabilization fund to deal with the impact. But that has also run into difficulties. Because at a point in time, the application forms contained the picture of Nana Akufo-Addo. Now, the country, to demonstrate how difficult the country is now, I mean, just yesterday or Thursday, the Ministry of Finance, speaking through the Deputy Minister, Boahin, said that Ghana uses 89.1% of its revenue to service debt. And the revenue, 89% of the revenue here includes income that is derived from trading activities and from taxes and grants to service debts. That means we are left with less than 20% of our money for the purposes of implementing government programs. And so that shows how difficult we are in. I mean, the difficulty that government is in. And that also brings to light why government is looking for money. It's looking for money because there's no money. There's simply no money. So government can go for Ajapa and take 500 because it needs money. It needs money. Now, the public debt today is standing at 258 billion Ghana cedis.
That is if you put everything together.
Yes, 258 Ghana. That's why I say public debt. But if you want me to segregate...
No, don't segregate. It's public debt. It is public debt.
Now, just yesterday, the Ministry of Finance said it will borrow about 23 billion Ghana cedis to end the year. Just yesterday. In fact, the minister, when he came to Parliament with the supplementary budget, said that he needed 11.8 billion to complete the year. And we do not know whether this 11.8 billion that the minister spoke about in the supplementary budget asked for Parliament to approve, which we approved, is included in the 22.8 billion. We do not know yet. Now, so that is why when private schools say that they face difficulties, we have to understand. Because the country simply is on the dire straits and there's no money anywhere. Opening the schools is very important because everywhere that I have studied during this pandemic, in terms of education, they put the interest of the child first. Because you see, I trained as a teacher, and there is no substitute to face-to-face encounter between a child and a teacher. There's no substitute. In terms of discipline, in terms of impartation of knowledge, and all that. Now, coronavirus is allowing us to devise innovative ways of teaching, the Zoom learning. Today, you just said, somebody, for education at the basic level, is free. Somebody has just sent you that he pays how much?
This is 1,008.
For only
the virtual
bundle, the data. For only data. The school is charging for data because the data is not free. The school is charging for the data because to get Zoom, you need data.
And some infrastructure as well.
You see? So that is imposing additional costs. That is why I believe the gradual opening of schools is important.
Even before January?
Even before January. I believe that. That's my position.
Okay.
As an individual.
Okay.
My position. That look, somehow we should be thinking of how to bring the economy back. We should be thinking of how, because the future of our children can be irretrievably lost by the coronavirus. Irretrievably. The longer we keep them at home, the more they suffer.
All right. Quick one.
Now,
I don't have time, so I just want to take quick words on this one.
In other places, they say, look, do that, but make sure
that it's
safe, that you maintain social distancing, you observe all the protocols that you put in place, and you ensure that the people are protected.
Well, we've seen elements of that. Richard.
Godfred,
apologies, but I have to give you just 3 minutes on this.
Well, my
time is spent.
It's okay. I'll see.
2 minutes. Okay. Franklin says 2 minutes.
No problem.
My co-host, Franklin.
Okay, I'll see to my brother. You see, the thing about it, first of all, he committed a little bit of untruth there when you were talking about the NDC.
The numbers.
Yes, all that when they would focus on the child and all this. They were the ones who were saying do means testing. When you do means testing, you're not focused on the child.
What is it?
That free education must be for all the children of this country.
Yes.
That's what we're doing. Okay, so don't try to... What you were saying earlier, that yes. It was the private school here and the public school there, that kind of...
It's not untrue. The private schools are not part of the...
No, I'm just saying... Is that untrue? I'm just saying that what you said that when you come you're going to do is what I'm saying. Because when you
believe the NDC.
Yes.
I don't believe what I'm saying.
Yes.
But it's not untrue.
No,
he doesn't believe you.
What you say,
it's okay.
What you say you are going to do.
Let's not argue it.
No.
Let's not argue it.
We're talking about facts.
Yes.
You see, you can be entitled to your opinion.
What you say you are going to do is what is not true.
You're not entitled to the same your facts.
It's okay.
Let me explain to you if you want to.
No, you don't have to explain.
So the point I'm making,
you're talking about facts and you're talking about opinion.
No, I'm not talking about. I'm saying that you say when you come, you focus on all Ghanaian child. I'm saying what you did before, you didn't focus. You didn't focus on all Ghanaian child.
I didn't say that.
Let's not argue this.
I didn't say that.
And I wouldn't do something.
I didn't say that. I said that when we come, we will make sure that private schools become part of the implementation of the free senior high school.
Yeah. So what you were doing before, what you were doing before, did not take the private school into account. Okay, because you said you were doing this.
Focus on the point. That's 1 minute.
That is very important to make that point.
Yeah.
You see, but I agree, and essentially the president yesterday made the point that there must be some arrangement to assist the private schools, and so that commitment for me is absolute, and it's a matter of time that will be done. It exemplifies the sensitivity and the compassion to make sure that we get to a point where everybody is taken care of. So it's just a matter of time, and I encourage that they engage with the process. I was a little unhappy with them from the beginning, the issuing of the statement, and we are going to God and all that. I don't think that should be the tone. The tone must be one of engagement. I think Mr. Asari explained, and we see that there's some engagement going. It's just a question of people understanding and moving the process forward. Let's do that. By all means, we must take care of all Ghanaians, and that remains one of the commitment of the president. And if you see what my brother was talking about, okay, to date, they were the ones opposed to the opening gradual.
Richard, it's okay.
I'm just ending. No, because it's important. It's important to make the point. Okay. Because it appears as though that the president is the one who doesn't want to open the school. But he is the one, when he wanted to open the SHS, what did they say? Oh, because he wants them to register. When he said they should go and run exam, they said, are you sure this is safe? And all the noise that came when children went to school. So I'm saying that the president and the government has
Institute is not a serial calling institution.
No, don't say that. Don't say that.
No.
Don't say that.
It's okay. What's your policy? I want you to discuss policy. This policy.
Hold on for me. Hold on for me as well. Franklin.
Let me just end for you. Okay.
Franklin will end for me.
Just briefly.
Just give him one to Franklin.
No, don't give it to him.
Franklin.
Because you're supposed to retire on
I'm going to say that
Franklin, wrap up for us.
We must actually encourage the government. I think the government has done well in managing COVID. That without doubt. We should be watching out for the potential pitfalls in this, even though we are celebrating the success. Quickly to the issue. Look, I think this has just come back to bite us. When my good friend Richard suggests means testing probably should not be considered, the means testing could have helped us to determine that, look, these, first of all, not everybody would have needed the money for free SHS. But also, if you wanted to do it, then you must as well let the money follow the child. And so the child could decide where they want to go. I suspect the problem the private schools are facing right now is that, first of all, they are facing a dwindling fortune in terms of the numbers, because free SHS has taken everything. Then secondly, now, they are now faced with the real danger of being closed down, not by government per se, but by their own operations, because they do not have adequate resources. I think once we've decided to open up the economy, we must also focus on their fortunes as well. And that's all they're asking for. Because as Mr. Sari has said, the private schools of the poor are actually a significant bedrock when it comes to education, and where the government cannot have its tentacles spread all over. I think it's important to engage them. And there's any opportunity for them to exact some of the freebies, not necessarily freebie, but
Thank you very much, Franklin Kujo. That is how we will end the big issue. My name is Godfred Akoto Boafo. Thank you very much, Richard Ahiagba, Executive Director of the Danka Institute, Anabulu Nusa Husseini, Franklin Kujo, and Kofi Asari. I hope you had a good weekend. See you next week.